Hi and welcome to the New Investors My Story. Today I'm talking to the co-founder of comparison site finder.com.au. Please welcome Fred Schebesta. Hi Fred, how are you?
I'm really good.
Good.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on the show. We were speaking about this for a while actually, you coming on the show. Yeah.
It's a nice show you got here, and you've got some great viewers and listeners as well.
You were just named on the Young Rich list, 193 million at 38 years of age. How did that feel?
Well, it was a big story, but it felt like every other day. I don't know. I think it's just all part of it. We've been working on Finder, and the crew at Finder made this happen. It's really, I think, a tribute to them more than to me.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And I think there's people writing articles, selling and partnering with companies, doing press releases every day, and that's who that goes out to.
Yeah. Finder, it wasn't your first business. Your first one was the SEO that you sold. Tell me about when you launched then that first business.
Well, the first business was a digital marketing agency, and it was a brutal company. We Frank and I, we used to chase business all day, every day, and we got a lot of it, a bit of it, but our clients were making huge amounts of money because we were in that early internet wave, right? We were building websites for them, getting them to rank at the top of Google, helping them with their email marketing, all those kinds of things. And we were the ones that were kind of, struggling to survive, but they were making a lot of money. And we were like, why don't we build a website? And that's kind of when Finder came from.
Right. Okay. So because it was an SEO company, you were just helping people.
We were building websites and doing SEO. So, getting people at the top of Google.
Yeah.
And that just worked incredibly well for our clients.
Yeah.
We actually, Frank and I used to live on, tin spaghetti, and we used to wear our shoes. We hated it when it rained. Raining is terrible because we used to wear our shoes all the way through the soles.
Oh, right, okay.
So if it rained, then our socks would get wet, and so it was kind of annoying. So we used to avoid the puddles as we walked.
But so Frank is he's your business partner. But so were you friends?
Yeah, we used to. We actually went to school together, and we played tennis with each other. We weren't sort of very close friends.
Yeah.
And actually, at university, we became a little bit closer friends. It was actually after university we became very close friends. We actually lived together for 2.5 years. And we had a house. We had 21 guests. So we had 5 bedrooms and 21 people through the house in 2.5 years. We actually ran the place like a business. It was an Airbnb before there was Airbnb.
To get extra cash.
So to get extra money to survive.
Right? Yeah.
And I think Frank really and I just naturally have that. It's like a yin and yang, but there's 2 dots of each other. Frank's a bit more, I guess, he looks a bit more conservative, but he has a wild streak to him as well.
Right, okay.
And I think I look a little wild, but I actually have a very conservative part of me as well.
Yeah. So you always balance each other out in a certain way.
Yeah, I think Frank's very emotionally aware. He has a real calming, balancing effect. He's like the father of the company.
Right,
and, I'm not sure what that makes me, but...
the child. No. And, but yeah, so to find that, the right partner to be successful in business. It's not an easy thing to find, is it?
I think, I had a business partner before that, and we actually went separate ways, and then Frank came and joined me. And I think I learned a lot from that. I actually had a few other failed businesses before that as well.
Yeah.
With the other business partners. And I think the compliment of Frank and myself, it's, if I look back and I tried to manifest it, I don't think I could necessarily pick a person or an individual. I think it's actually kind of a miracle in and of itself.
Yeah.
And I think it happens naturally, right? Humans, you feel things, like your intuition and those kind of things, and you persist. And I think the other thing you need to go through is some really, really hard times. I think the forming of a great relationship comes from the crucible of extreme pain and suffering. And then there's those bonds you can't break because you've been down as far as you can go and you've hit rock bottom together.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a time we were sitting outside. We were $250,000 owing to the tax department. We had to make payroll. We hadn't paid ourselves in 3 months. And we had a court case going on. It was the roughest time. We thought we were going to give up. And I remember that moment we said, we were like, we're going to close the doors. And in that very moment, I remember we paused and just went, no, we can do this. Like we're smart enough, we're hungry enough, we want to do this. And we turned around and we just turn the ship around.
Is that in business one or business two?
First business, yeah.
How did you turn it around? What were some of the coping mechanisms when?
We changed internal staff. We stopped. We really just focused back on the core business. It was the best lesson you could possibly learn is how do you run a profitable company? Because there's a lot of companies out there right now that I don't know whether they're ever going to become profitable. Is Uber ever going to be profitable? Who knows? But I think scaling it back, cutting costs, reviewing what are we actually doing and what are we not, what are we doing and are we not doing, and getting back to the real core centerpiece of the company. That was the lesson we learned.
So you reckon that will be a key way to survive when you're hit with challenges, to go back to what it is your values are, the whole why of your company?
I think it's more than why.
Yeah.
It's to go back to the core business that you're running, because you come up with all these ideas along the way, and what's the actual, what is the customer need you're solving? What is the business and things that service you provide? And just make that little part better, and literally shut everything else down.
Yeah.
And us was just building websites and and helping people get to the top of Google. That's all we did. And there were all sorts of other things, but we weren't very good at that.
So how do you do that? What's the secret to get someone at the top of Google? And I'm sure it's changed. Was it back then and then to now? So back then first.
If I go back in time to 2006, it was the wild west of Google.
Yeah.
I did some things, and in those days, what was grey hat is now black hat, and what was black hat was no one would ever touch anymore. So we were doing some of the grey stuff. Some of the white stuff is obviously as well. You do that, but there were things I sort of we reverse engineered Google to figure out how to get to the top, and a lot of it was around links and writing, let's say, not the most high quality content, and doing lots of it.
So doing lots of content, but just SEO content.
Yeah, even there are a lot of big sites that got penalized for doing this as well. But we actually got penalized 5 times on Finder for doing some of the most spicy things you could imagine.
Yeah, so that was because in 2011 Google penalized you. So that happened overnight.
Yep. How
did you recover from that?
Well, I was in Norfolk, in the north east of England. Actually, I think it's the east. And by the sea, and it was freezing cold, and it was 3 a.m. My phone rang, and my phone doesn't normally ring at that hour, but I picked it up, and then I went out to the car, and I got told the news, and I was just like, okay. I was quite calm about it. I was like, okay, what are we going to do now? So it's, let's put a plan in place. What are we actually going to do? Start doing. And we started forming a plan from that in a basic way. But, I think it's always happened. I'm fairly used to big, crazy things and heavy knocks coming. And so, I saw it as just another thing to go and
to tackle.
Yeah.
And so they penalized you because of the dodgy links, or links, like heavily linked and not providing content that was really actually useful. Is that what?
I think it's definitely all part of it. Yeah. It was a manual penalty. So someone in Google physically came in and just went,
Bing.
Right,
you're gone.
Yeah. Which could have been led maybe by some of our competitors, that they were informed about that, which is natural and fine. And I have no problems. I'm actually very grateful for it, to be honest, because we have a ninja sword that hangs on the front of Finder. It's an actual ninja sword, by the way. And it reminds us, of the, not only of the power of our tools, but how it can cut you as well. And to be very careful with what we do. So our SEO is something we now are completely white hat. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot longer for us to do things than other companies would. We don't take the shortcuts, but I think that's the lessons you learn, and they're the principles we put in place to create a business. So there's a big difference. I knew tactics and things and ways to spin up sites and get to the top of Google, and they would crush and fall. But the difference is to moving from tactics to actually creating a company. That was the big move we made.
Right. So more or less you were wiped off. How long did it take to build it back up and come back?
3 months.
3 months? Was that all?
It was brutal. No, 3 months. 3 months of the internet's like, I don't know, I'd say 3 years back then.
So what did you do in that 3 months? You just built up, how did you fix it?
So we went through every single link that points into Finder. I remember sitting with a spreadsheet of 10,000 links, and I personally went from the top to the very bottom, and we called up people to remove them. I remember at one point we had to speak in Chinese, and I didn't speak terribly good Chinese, or someone in the office did, and we spoke on Skype, and we paid them I don't know, some money, and they removed the link and everyone was cool.
Okay.
Apparently a little @ symbol is called little mouse in Chinese. So we said little mouse, we didn't realize that, but anyway. But, and then we went through and we cut huge amounts of content. We started publishing much higher quality standard of content.
Yeah.
And we basically begged, borrowed, stealed, and did everything we possibly could to get it back.
And so then a year later, then the Penguin changes came through. Did that impact you?
Not really, no.
Okay.
And that I think that was because we were already down a lot from before that, but we sort of then slowly started to grow.
So your business is based off consumer trust and trust that they are getting the best deal. How do you build that trust when consumers would know? Well, some people might not know that you guys will get a commission from all your suppliers.
Yeah, so I think this comes back to the lesson we learned from that. There's a rule in finance. There's one editorial key rule, and it's don't break the trust of the user.
Yeah.
That's it. So, and our second value at Find is to be straight up.
Mm-hmm.
So being straight up is just telling it as it is. So there's no selling in our content. It's just information. And legally we can't sell. We're not in the business of selling. That's a whole other financial advice category. So the facts are there. Mm. And then we basically create tools and write guides to how to interpret that.
Yeah.
And then users make their own decision at the end of the day. But I think that trust comes from, like, we provide 24-hour customer support via chat. And we don't charge for that. And the number of problems that people have with their products, I remember one of our users wrote in, how do you make a lamb roast? And one of our crew wrote literally a 3-paragraph response, get the lamb, set it to 180 degrees, wrote it all out basically to answer the problem. And what the belief we've always had is go to the nth degree to go and serve and help that user and solve the actual problem.
Yeah.
And I think that's that attitude, right, we've always had. And I don't know, it just came from in the beginning, we just always went to the nth degree to serve the customer.
Yeah.
And I think people, like, there's a lot of, externality that comes from that. 50% of our users go to our site, get a great deal, and leave and go direct.
Go direct.
Which is fine. It's great. It's fantastic. They got a great deal. We deliver on our promise.
Yeah.
Everyone's happy. I'm excited about that, and I think it helps people. But I think there's a lot of information and a lot of data that we've gathered together, and some of that we get a small feedback from.
Well, it's true, because like these comparison sites, they have revolutionized how consumers choose like a home loan or credit cards, and instead of having to go to multiple different websites. But what do you think are some of the biggest threats to the price comparison industry? Like, could Google just turn around and change algorithms again? And
yeah, they will. I think that actually comparison in and of itself is actually a growth industry. Mm. So if you go back to a couple of principles, one is if you read Bill Gates's autobiography in the 80s, he said in the future everything will be automatically compared. And why isn't it automatically compared? That it's annoying, and it's I just want to have all the information there. And Google kind of has done that, but it's kind of like it just gives you 10 blue links. Yeah. Whereas, there's 6 letters in Google and 6 letters in Finder, right? It's the same length. And actually, if you just go to Finder first and have a look at the information, probably better than the 10 blue links you get in the beginning. And I think that's the way, people, I think over time, people will go, they find their niches, they find their ways to get that same information. And I actually think Google's being disrupted in the sense that, for example, in America, if you want to buy something, people just go straight to Amazon. Yeah. Right. It's all there. Same with Finder, right? If you want to compare pretty much anything, you can just go straight to Finder. And so I think that Google gives you that first look at things. Mm-hmm. But I think over time, this idea of comparison is starting to grow. The second thing is, in Australia, only about 20% of people compare. It's actually a very low portion. Most people get a bank account as a child, keep that for the rest of their life. Or they bank with the same bank their family banks with, and they stay with them, right? Yeah. And comparison as an idea in the UK is about 60% of people, right? They get a bill. Yeah. And then they go and compare it. Whereas here, they get a bill and they pay it. Yeah. And I guess we're on a mission, to try and change that and encourage Australians to save more. Since the Royal Commission, the Banking Royal Commission, has that increased? Have you found that's increased for home loans and for banks? I think home loan rates are incredibly low right now. We're seeing an unprecedented demand on the site for people switching. It's yeah, it's incredible, right, to some degree.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it's kind of like I think that's one commitment, but I hope the behavior that we're trying to create is always compare by default. And we're trying to build some new tools as well to do this. So we have a new application we're developing which will automatically compare your products. You just connect your bank account up and we have a look at that and it'll just literally find the new products for you.
Yeah.
That's coming out in February.
That's the personal finance app.
Right.
And tell me, so with the future of Finder, is there an IPO on the cards, or what would it take for you to consider listing?
So I think that when you think about a listing and or a trade sale or whatever it may be, you have to think, can you monopolize your market? This is my theory on this. This is my personal view. There's probably everyone has a lot of different other views, but I do think there's a point in time where if you think about Finder is an Australian company, right? And it exports its business all around the world. So there's, Finder.com in the US and the UK, Canada, it markets to many other countries. Our business is about, it's still primarily Australian based, but the international business is growing dramatically.
Yeah.
So it's really an Australian tech company if you think about it, which is quite interesting. Google's an American company, Apple's an American company, Facebook is an American company. This is us as a nation, I think, coming back and saying, okay, we can do technology as well.
Yeah.
And I think what would be great at some point in time is that Australians can own part of Finder as well, because people can own part of Google and they can own part of Facebook. And I think there are limited investment options for technology, Australian technology companies that Australians can buy into and support. And one day I think, there should be, I would like to list the company to allow Australians to be able to join and participate, and I guess bring those earnings back to Australia.
But is that on the cards anytime soon?
We don't have a fixed plan. I think it's something we talk about, but it's something which is getting talked about more right now. I think it's just something I think that it gets to a certain point in size where I think it'd be great if Australians can share in the growth of Finder.
Absolutely, yeah.
And particularly, I guess, for super funds as well. Everyone, it's putting 9.5% in. It's one of the biggest industries in Australia. And pretty much we all own Australian banks. If you think about it, we all bash the banks, but actually our retirement is going to be from the banks anyway, right?
Yeah.
So I hope that we can have an Australian company that people can, retire on and we can all share in the win. And that's the way I sort of look at that.
Yeah, great. You have diversified the business model. And one of those is you have an internal venture capital fund. What are you looking to invest in as part of that?
I went on a massive rabbit hole down the cryptocurrency path and really mastered that and understand that whole industry. So we have a strong position in Bitcoin. That's something which we're quite passionate about. And the other part we're working on is this app, right? This application, which is, most businesses, when you download the app, it's kind of a representation of the website.
Right.
In the Finder case, the app will actually not be the same as the website. It'll be different. It'll actually be an application which will, as I said, automatically compare your products for you. And that's a different mindset, a different experience. So we see that as a whole other business. The idea of automatic comparison of where people can not, I guess, have these things brought to them and the ideas, the insights. And I think there's some incredible growth and opportunities and other businesses that Finder can sort of branch into then, right? So could it look could it look at investments, or could it have a bank account in and of itself, which is quite fascinating, right? Because I think if you look at the fintech space right today, what is a bank in and of itself? What are payments? I think those questions are changing dramatically right now. And I think Finder is well placed to be able to aggregate all this new fragmentation back to one place. And I'm hoping, we can really invest behind that and create some future services which make things just a whole lot easier.
So you're like, say, for example, I was going to go and get price comparison on, say, credit card, but you'd be looking to have changes to the laws and open banking that you could actually switch the credit cards for the consumer. Is that what you're...
Yeah, so open banking is a great initiative by the government. Right now, today, it's only read, which means I can only read, if you come to Finder, contribute, put in your details, Finder can only, and you can only basically use the Finder tool to read your bank account. You can't write. So what I mean by write is you can't apply for a product, you can't switch, you can't make a payment. I think the government right now is going to change that, and they're going to bring write access, which they've done in the UK.
Yeah.
So in the UK, in September last year, there was about 10 million accesses to the API of open banking.
Yeah.
Now there's 110 million. Right? That's a massive growth, 10x or 11x, whatever it might be. And I think this will be the same thing here in Australia. We want convenient services. We're going to be able to switch easily.
Yeah.
And I think we want it all on an app right in front of us.
Yeah.
I'm sure we're all, we've got our phone, which is glued to us. We feel anxiety when we lose it, and we sleep with it more than, we'd like to admit. I think a lot of people will hand dive after it as well when going to the bathroom.
You have been very heavily involved in Bitcoin. Have you been a little bit quieter on that front recently?
Yeah, I think I've learned a lot about the cryptocurrency space.
Yep.
I went on a massive deep dive learning about it. I think I did the same thing I've done it with all sorts of things. I learned about SEO and I went super deep dive and learned about it. In cryptocurrency, I think Bitcoin will never end. Bitcoin is like BitTorrent. BitTorrent can't be closed down. Bitcoin can't be closed down. It's like internet money, which will always exist. Yep. So I'm very bullish on that. And I think that's something which, as an idea, is, it's actually a miracle that it exists, to be honest.
And that's there was a report there in Bloomberg last week about our blockchain, obviously that the technology behind Bitcoin is dead. So would you agree with that? Or do you think it's still going to, in 2020, where do you think Bitcoin's going to go?
So blockchain was actually invented in the 80s. Like most technology, actually, most of the great technologies were invented in the 70s or 80s. And the idea of actually bringing a digital money with a blockchain, that was the revolution.
Yeah.
And 2017 was that great year of doing that, right? And everyone got on board with it. I think it got overhyped and those kind of things. There were other blockchains that spawned from that. I think there probably might be some other ideas and usages of blockchain, but it's actually an old technology. Put that to the side for a second. Bitcoin, on the other hand, this idea of internet money, and that there's no CEO of Bitcoin to call. You can't call up Bitcoin.
No.
There's no one, and if you lose your money, it's gone, right?
Yeah,
That's pretty violent in and of itself. But the idea that you hold your money, that a bank doesn't hold it, that the government doesn't hold it, the idea that the people own their own money, that is a revolution. That is an idea, that is an iconic idea, which has now been going for, almost 11 years as a concept, is never going to die.
Yeah.
And I think that's the miracle that has taken place.
Yeah. So would you invest, like if you were a punter, they had like say 20 grand to invest, would you recommend investing in Bitcoin now?
Well, I think, everyone's, this is not financial advice. So,
no, I know.
But, everyone should make their own financial decisions.
True.
I've been heavily briefed upon that.
Yeah.
But, if you want to invest in Bitcoin, prepare to invest as much as you're willing to lose.
Yes.
Because it is, if you look at it back in time, it's like all those other cryptocurrencies. I think they're interesting, but there were a few. If you go analogously back to the internet boom.
Yeah.
So if you look at Amazon stock actually flew up and then it literally crashed all the way back down and then it came back up, right?
Yeah.
There are coins and there are projects inside cryptocurrency that will continue to survive and endure. And even though they may have bad names, a Bitcoin right now is trading at $8,200 US. Like $8,200 US. If you think about that, it started at even less than a cent. Just the idea of that, the concept of it, and that its supply is diminishing over time. Mathematically, it's one of the greatest experiments I've ever seen in humanity. But I think that if I was going to take 20 grand, I'd probably not put all of that into cryptocurrency.
No.
I am actually quite a stock investor. I love stocks. I actually understand companies. And I can see inside companies, and I'm a long-term investor.
Yeah.
And that's how I like to invest. So
who would you invest in right now? If you were looking, would you be a stock picker or would you just go like for a low-cost index fund?
I personally like to buy individual stocks. I'm a bit old school like that. And I like to look at themes. So things which I think if you were to look forward, say 5-10 years time, companies that are going to be around and or companies which are going to become a big deal in the future. and they may not be today the sexiest company. So I buy companies like, I love companies like MasterCard and Visa. I think they're probably the most underrated companies. Everything we buy today
Is on
MasterCard or Visa.
Yeah,
And it's becoming more and more and more, right? Like who uses cash? Like in the world, but in America, people use cash and things like that. But
so a couple of those, what would be a couple of those themes, examples that you would pick?
Digital wallets. I find that fascinating.
Yep.
There's a company called Kiwi and a company called StoneCo out of Brazil. Kiwi's a Russian digital wallet.
Yep.
I find those companies fascinating. By the way, StoneCo was actually invested in by Warren Buffett as well. Brazilian company, but quite interesting. I love. I actually invested in Atlassian. I don't know if I can share this, but I think it's an Australian company startup, and we should get behind our Australian companies. I like Microsoft. I like Apple. Those companies are going to survive and endure. And then I think there are other companies which I invest in that are more very long-term investments. So I still like the Australian banks. Those were US stocks before. In Australia, I still like the Australian banks. I think they are not going anywhere.
Yep.
Regardless of what we're going to do, we all still bank with them, even though we
try not to
have a royal commission about them.
Yeah.
Regardless, we all own actually the Australian banks in our super funds. So that's by the by. I like the internet stocks of Australia, Seek, REA. I don't think they're going anywhere. I don't think we're changing that very quickly. Yeah. They've been great performers over time. They pay dividends. People love dividends in Australia because you pay franking credits. Whereas in America, there's less of that. There's no franking credits and things like that. But I think those are some interesting themes. One of the challenges I think right now in investing is the markets are so high.
Absolutely.
Like all-time high.
Absolutely.
And I think everyone's going either one, is this going to come down in an absolute crash, which eventually, things that go fly up have to come back.
Yeah.
And when's it going to happen?
Yeah.
But the problem is the interest rates are so low that people are just like, well, where am I going to put it?
Yeah.
And if I want to get a yield, they're throwing it into the stock market. It's pumping the prices up higher. Eventually, this game has to stop, right? And I think if you look at Warren Buffett's business right now, he's just stockpiling $128 billion of cash, right?
Yeah.
And in the high level sense, that's fascinating, right? So if a great investor is just holding cash.
And what about property in Australia?
I think property had a big pullback recently. Interest rates, the US just indicated that they're not sure whether they're going to cut or keep or raise right now interest rates, which is quite fascinating, right? So they sort of pause and slow down a bit. And Australia sort of tends to follow that a bit. 3 interest rate cuts are going to spike property prices, right? Mm-hmm. So I think property is going to go up a bit. By the way, this is all, you should make your own decisions. It's just my personal opinion.
Well, it has done a jump, but I think, there's signs that say the next year that it could come down.
I just think, unfortunately, but interest rates are so low. So people just go, well, I can just borrow money and it'll keep supporting the prices. And I just can't see what's going to reverse that unless negative gearing gets changed by the government, a big change in government. I don't see the government changing unless I can't see what's going to, I think you could potentially even see negative interest rates in Australia.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which sounds insane.
It is
right?
Insane.
But we're very close. We're like 2 cuts away or 3 cuts away, right? Which is...
0.
And that's an unprecedented concept in Australia. But, the IMF has written papers about this. And, imagine if you have to pay the bank to hold your money.
Yeah.
Where are you going to put it?
Yeah.
Property and stocks. And so unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know which way you look at it, I can't figure out how that game stops exactly. Japan's never been able to reboot their economy. Europe's still struggling to some extent. But how do you reverse that dimension? I don't know. But it means you want to hold hard assets. So gold, property, stocks, things like that. I think they're going to be strong.
Safe ones. We've got questions flying in here thick and fast from the audience. So I'll just run through a few of them.
Fast answers.
Okay, quick ones. Would you say you need a thick skin to be a successful entrepreneur? And what are your key takeaways to finesse this particular skill set? That's not necessarily a fast answer, but anyway.
So
to be a successful
I actually think having a thick skin used to be what entrepreneurs had.
Yep.
And I actually think that's old school. And in fact, what you actually want to train is your emotional intelligence to be able to handle very direct and aggressive feedback. So everything that's coming at you and being open to hearing what people are saying, I think that's when you can actually make and listen and address what's actually going on in companies. Whereas I think if you were just a thick skin and you ignore that and just take the hits, regardless, I think that needs to be re-looked at. So the way I deal with that is I've done a lot of emotional work. I have an emotional coach, which is, he's incredible. And it's trained me to be able to listen and connect to that feedback and just see it as feedback, but then to actually go and make your own decision at the end of the day. And people respect that. They're okay with that. They feel they've been heard. That's okay. Not everyone is, everyone's going to, obviously has their different views and things like that. And you're the leader, right? At the end of the day, you need to make that call and you got to take responsibility.
Right.
So you can hear the feedback, but listen to yourself as well. Combine those two together and make your own choice, because at the end of the day, you're the leader.
Yeah. So really working on that emotional intelligence piece.
Massively.
Wow. Okay. What advice would you give to someone who wants to make money online as a side hustle?
Find a marketplace, an existing marketplace. So Amazon, eBay, Craigslist, Gumtree. I think there's a new one. There's a couple of new ones out there as well that started up. And find an angle where you can dominate. Find something small, profitable, where you can make $1, where you don't have to pay much in marketing, but you can put it together and you can make $1. And from that, you can then go and meet your customers and learn actually what is the problem they're trying to solve. And hopefully from the back of that, you'll build a business.
Yeah.
That's how I would start today.
Yeah.
If I was going to start again.
Find the marketplace and then find something that you're going to solve, a problem that you're going to solve.
Yep, a small one. So that's a tactic. That's an idea. By the way, there's all sorts of ways to make money on the internet.
Sure.
And I probably didn't start in the most, let's say, white areas. I was a bit dark and grey.
Yeah.
But you got to test the boundaries, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I think the only other thing is in the book 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, there are 4 fundamental defensive moats a company can have.
Yeah.
And you want to build to one of those eventually. But on the internet, I think these marketplaces dominate so much space and so much opportunity that exists in the inefficiencies of them that you can make some good money.
Yeah. Nice one. If you could go back 5 years, what would you do differently in business? I'd say there's lots of things you could do differently.
2014, I think we've performed really well.
Yeah.
I was going through a divorce at the time, and I actually felt I performed personally quite well during that by trying to limit the company and separate the company from my personal self. And I had a lot of challenging times. It was quite a dark period of myself. And I had to go and reinvent myself during that time. I actually think I did a great job. Like, I think I look completely, I feel reinvigorated. I'm inspired. I love what Finder's doing. I think the crew at Finder are incredible. And I'm so appreciative that they stuck with me through that tough period.
How do you do that? If you're going through something rough in your personal life and then you're leading a multi-million-dollar company, how do you separate the two and stay focused?
So, that's a hard problem. There's no, and you make mistakes. And I think I didn't, I made mistakes throughout that, and I did my best. But some of the things I really tried to keep focused on was exercising.
Okay.
Exercising, I think, is actually built into humanity and humans, and it allows you to reset. And I don't use music. I don't run with other, I try to just have a personal trainer to do classes, because actually what I'm looking for is just a pause in life. I'm not actually looking for, you need space to think. People talk about the shower. I try to do that through exercise. I don't find the shower. I find the shower a pretty intense place, actually.
You find the shower intense?
There's just a lot of water coming in and just, half drowning,
I don't think I've ever heard someone say the shower is an intense place.
It's just a pretty, I don't know. I just think it's not the most. Like, actually, if you think about it at its core, let's go and open a pipe in your own house. I don't know. It's just for me, conceptually, it's pretty out there.
So when you're exercising, music, that's your time to think and that helps you focus, back into.
And then take one problem that you're facing that you feel anxious about.
Yeah.
And just ask yourself the question.
Okay.
How do I solve this problem? And you're not thinking about it, and then just blank your mind, and your subconscious will do that work, because you're giving it. Your actual brain, I don't think we actually come up with most ideas. I think your subconscious does.
It does. You wake up at 5 a.m. and I go, that's it. And then write it down. Yeah.
And so what you're doing is you're recreating that.
Yeah.
So you just ask the question, let your subconscious do the work, which is, I reckon, probably 97% of our whole entire world. and blank out your mind. Just focus on moving your body from. And jogging to me is insane. If you think about it evolutionary, you're going to walk out your door and run around in a circle. That's bonkers, right? Evolutionarily, that like who's doing that? If someone from the 1900s looked at us, we'd be like, "Why are you running around in circles?"
Yeah, or if they looked at the
Not
gym,
trying to even go anywhere.
Yeah, or even a gym though was 10 times worse. You're
Yeah,
just
let's go and
standing
pick things up on purpose and
Yeah.
pay someone to do it.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty crazy, right?
It is,
But
absolutely.
evolutionary, right? There's a purpose. Like we used to, people used to walk from like Melbourne to Sydney, or like walk from Sydney to the Blue Mountains.
Yeah.
If you wanted to go somewhere back in time, you didn't have the money to catch a train or whatever it may be, you'd walk.
Yeah.
Right. So evolutionary, we're supposed to exercise. We're supposed to move. And so recreate that, and then use the power that's actually inside you, which is subconscious thought. I think brains are incredible, but we just the most destructive thing we do is we add notifications on our phone. We participate in large amounts of social media, and which is brutal. And then we consume passively information by we want noise around us for no reason.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. What is the next area, do you think, that is ripe for digital disruption?
Wow, there's a lot. I think the insurance space is stuck in the 50s to a large degree. We still, filling in forms. Like insurance in and of itself is an idea, but it is like brutal to deal with an insurance company in most countries, particularly even outside of Australia.
Sure,
right?
yeah.
I think it's a huge industry. I think regulation and the technology around that. So dealing with, there's still large amounts of industries using paper.
Yeah.
And tickets. Like I was just in Japan, and like I went to the train station and I bought a ticket, and they gave me 3 receipts and two. And I was like, what is? The industrial era has kind of ended. Has it not? No, it hasn't yet.
No.
Not in all countries. I think banking is fascinating, and payments. As I said, that's an industry I'm invested in personally, and find is very invested in with our app. I think there's almost, I think, a disruption actually coming of digital in and of itself, right? You've got these 14-year-olds, 16-year-olds at home on Snapchat, watching YouTube, playing Minecraft, and not going outside and meeting people. Mm. And I think there needs to be there's going to be this moment in time where people start to go, wow, let's go back outside and meet people again.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to change, right? Our phones are sucking us into this digital world, which is incredible, right? And it's super addictive. It hits dopamine levels that are, just as good as most, drugs that are out there. And so a lot of kids and teenagers are growing up and they're getting the same hit, the same feeling, but not actually meeting people in the real world.
Yeah.
And I think digital in and of itself, this comeback to humanity, no phones, put your phone at the door, let's turn off our phones, let's come back and meet people. I think there's going to be a turning back eventually.
Yeah, so that'll be the revolution away from digital.
Yeah, it's gone real far.
Yeah, absolutely. Who has been your mentor on your professional journey?
So I don't really have I couldn't say that person's my mentor. I don't have a person. The way in which I've done this is slightly different to other people potentially is, and this is just my way of solving these things, is I will get fascinated by an idea.
Yeah.
So maybe leadership or management, and I'll go and find the best managers that are out there, watch them on YouTube, their presentations, and then I'll buy their book. And then I almost, as though I'm meeting that person. If sometimes I actually get to meet the actual individual behind it, sometimes I don't. So an example, I was really fascinated by Danny Meyer, who made Shake Shack in the US. He also has about 20 other different restaurants.
Yep.
But he has an incredible culture, and he's learned to scale culture. So I got fascinated by him. I never met Danny Meyer. I would love to meet him, but I've read everything about him, and I almost felt like he was a mentor at one point. And then I'll move on to another one.
Okay. So not people that you know, but more people that you research and experts in their field.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think it's been always very hard for me because Australia, unlike the US, doesn't have as much generational wealth in technology.
Yeah.
Right. So in America, we always see these people who have, like, the families just have huge sums of money, but you've got to remember that they've had 3 to 5 generations of people, of families, come through and make money through different eras and pass that on through their family. And so the knowledge and mentorship is very hard to get in Australia. And so you have to pioneer that. And hopefully I can give back and mentor people, in the future as much as I can. And I think that's what needs to be, happen is Australian entrepreneurs need to come back and help, grow this next phase so the next generations can pass that on. And that's when you build lots of wealth in Australia. The Australian people will have more jobs that, are growing, and companies that are growing obviously allows for opportunity for growth. And that's what spreads the wealth in Australia.
And the last question. Given the success of Finder, I'm interested to learn how someone in your position sets up for retirement. What super funds are you with? Are you self-managed?
That's
Precise.
Yeah, very precise. But also very personal. So I'm happy to share. I don't use a super fund. I actually just recently removed all my money from a super fund I had for a very long period of time.
Okay.
And I run a self-managed super fund now. I will confess that is where I invest in cryptocurrency, because I see, for myself, and this is only for me, maybe other people have different views, but is the long-term bet and the potential of cryptocurrency and where it's going, I see is like how the internet's exploded and grown. I remember when connecting to the internet, I remember without the internet, I remember going to the library, I was reflecting on this the other day. If you want to look up, what was the 5th president in America? You could type that on Google. But if you want to go to the library and find that out, it's like quite an arduous journey.
Yeah, sure.
So I remember the impact the internet's had on humanity. So the same thing I think is going to happen in cryptocurrency. And so I have a long-term, very 25-year view on that.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
And that's the way I see super, because, I'm 38 today, 38 years young.
Yes.
And, retirement would be in quite a long period of time. Most of my investments I actually run actively because I prefer to be able to do whatever I want with them.
Yeah.
And I find super to being, this big lockup thing for me personally. And I just think it's challenging for me to look at that and invest. It's because you need to find long-term assets.
Yeah, for sure. Generally, for the average person, you need a lot more money to have a self-managed super fund. So
I don't actually have that much money in my self-managed super fund. I just wanted to control it.
To be able to have more control. Yeah, for sure. Fred, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks so much.